Hey everyone, welcome back. So you ready to dive into something? I was reading something interesting the other day about what if everybody put all their money in index funds?
Huh.
And I thought that'd be an interesting thing to kind of unpack today and see, what would the implications actually be?
Yeah. What would happen? Would the market just explode?
Right.
I don't know.
So to get us started, can you just for anyone who might not know, give us the real index fund 101?
Yeah. So I think the easiest way to think about an index fund is, those lists, like the top 500, whatever.
Right.
It's basically instead of you having to go and buy all 500 of those companies or whatever the index is, it's just one thing you can buy that is a little piece of all of them.
Yep.
So you get the average. You're not picking and choosing, you're just buying the average of all of them.
So you're not trying to time the market or pick the best stock?
Exactly. You're just saying, I think in general, whatever this index is, the S&P 500 or whatever it is,
Right.
over the long term, it's going to go up.
So it's almost like buying the whole market instead of trying to pick and choose winners and losers.
Exactly. It's like instead of trying to figure out which slice of pizza is going to be the best, you just buy the whole pizza.
Right.
You get a little bit of everything.
And that's the S&P 500 is kind of the big one, right?
Yeah, the S&P 500 is like the popular kid in school. Everyone knows about it. It's the one that's always in the news.
Right, like Apple, Microsoft, all those huge companies are in there.
Exactly. All the big players.
So that's kind of where I was going with this whole what if question. What if everyone just dumped all their money into funds that track those big companies, those big index funds? Wouldn't that just make those companies even bigger?
Yeah.
Almost artificially?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
If everyone's just blindly throwing money at these index funds, are we creating some sort of weird self-fulfilling prophecy?
Right. Are we creating a bubble? Because if everyone keeps buying into those same companies through these index funds, wouldn't that inflate their prices way beyond what they're actually worth?
It's a really interesting thought, right?
Yeah.
Because on its face, it seems logical, right? If everyone's buying into the same thing, the price has to go up.
Yeah.
But, and this is where it gets tricky,
Okay.
the market doesn't really work in a vacuum. Even with index funds, there's still always buying and selling happening. For every person putting money into an index fund, someone else might be cashing out, taking profits, or rebalancing their portfolio.
So it's not like all the index funds are working together to pump up the market.
Exactly.
They're not like some giant robot arm moving prices around.
Not at all.
Okay.
They're still subject to the laws of supply and demand, just like individual stocks.
So how does that actually play out in the real world? Can you give me an example?
Yeah, so a really good example is Meta. Remember earlier this year when they announced those better than expected earnings?
Oh, right.
Their stock price jumped up 20% in a single day.
20% in one day. That's huge.
It was massive. And it just goes to show that even if index funds hold a big chunk of a company, they're not the only ones calling the shots. That surge was driven by a whole bunch of individual investors, hedge funds, all sorts of players reacting to the news, reassessing Meta's value, and making their moves.
So even with index funds being so big now, it seems like the market is still this wild, unpredictable thing. It's is the market going to become this boring, predictable thing where everybody's just kind of along for the ride?
Yeah, we're all just going to end up in the same boat, just drifting along.
Exactly.
But think about it this way. What if instead of making things boring, it actually makes the other part of the market, the part that's not index funds, even more intense?
I'm intrigued. How so?
So you've got these active investors, right? The ones who are really digging into individual companies, trying to pick winners.
Right, the stock pickers.
Right. If everyone else is just chilling in their index funds, getting the market average, these active investors got to really step up their game.
Because they need to justify their fees, right?
Exactly. If you're charging people big bucks to manage their money, you can't just be oh yeah, we did about as well as the S&P 500.
Right. They've got to beat those index funds by a significant margin.
Exactly. So it's the more popular index funds get, the more pressure it puts on active investors to earn their keep.
So it's a weird kind of competition.
Yeah, it's this